Now, joining us for more on this is Aaliyah Vayez, who's international relations expert. Aaliyah, thank you so much for joining us this evening on News at Prime. It feels almost like deja vu once again. South Africa has been quite persistent and convincing to the ICJ, but the killings haven't stopped. In fact, they've gotten worse, as we've heard the top court in the world say again this afternoon. What do you make of this third preliminary order that has been given?
Thank you so much for having me. I think deja vu is a good way to put it, unfortunately. I think, you know, in a very practical sense, what has taken place today is exceptionally historic, you know, despite the fact that we've been, you know, South Africa has come to this court not once, but twice, but 3 times, you know, since December last year, and the situation has deteriorated. But in terms of historical record, you know, this is exceptionally important for this to be, you know, being considered as so serious, as so worth noting at the highest level of international law and governance, that parties to the United Nations take note of what's unfolding in Gaza as staunchly against what international governance and international law stands for, as well as principles of human rights. I think, yes, as you mentioned, in a very kind of unfortunate way, things on the ground in Palestine have not changed. We're still seeing, you know, nearly 1 million people being displaced from Rafah. We are, you know, the death toll is well over 35,000 people. But I think, as mentioned, an immense amount of pressure is now on not only Israel to legally abide by as a party to the United Nations, to the ruling that we saw handed down today, but also on the United Nations Security Council, because, as we know, they are the highest body with the highest level of enforcement power in the United Nations system of governance. And I think we're going to start seeing, as we have over the past week, more and more countries be pressured to not only recognize Palestine as a state, but also the issue of Israel and Palestine, which we've so historically known of for the past 76 years. So I think this is creeping well up its way to being the top of the world's agenda, as it should be.
I guess the big question also will be now, with all this added pressure, not it being the first or second, but the third time that South Africa goes, and other countries also supporting South Africa too, will Israel actually finally listen?
You know, I think we've seen that Israel has a long established pattern of not abiding by these orders, of acting on its own accord, of very blatantly saying, you know, we've had statements from various government officials, including Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, as well as its Minister of Defense, as well as its Foreign Affairs Minister, vehemently say, you know, we will do what we want to do, whether an international court tells us otherwise or not. And we've also seen, you know, a really big point to emphasize is that Israel has the support and the impunity from other, you know, supporting states to continue along with its genocidal actions, which we've seen, you know, across Gaza, as well as, you know, what's happening in the West Bank. We cannot forget settler attacks. We cannot forget violence in other parts of occupied Palestinian territories. So I think, no, I don't believe this is going to, you know, overnight alter Israel's established pattern of actions and reactions. But I do think this fundamentally puts pressure on Israel to consider itself, you know, potentially after whenever this genocide does end, after the genocide, and where it will stand in the eyes of the world. Because, you know, increasingly so, it is becoming isolated, not only in terms of international law, but in terms of how countries are viewing its actions, and how countries are viewing potential relations, diplomatic or otherwise, with Israel, as well as its supporters, which we, you know, chiefly must mention is the United States. My apologies.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we also heard from the ICJ president today, who said the provisional orders by the court in March did not fully address the situation in Palestine. What's the difference between the provisional orders that were made in January, March, and today?
I think instead of the difference, I'll focus on, you know, a common theme is that it not only recognized, or rather, you know, it not only recognized the seriousness of what is happening in the Gaza Strip in terms of Israel's military defensive, But I think what's most key is that for each of these judgments has it's almost like they've recognized the intensity with which Israel is acting. So in January, we had a kind of, if you want to say, a limited acknowledgement of what Israel has been doing, a recognition of, the limited seriousness of it. And gradually, we've built up to today where, the president of the court and backed by his supporting judges has said that the conditions under which Gazans or Palestinians are expected to live right now can be described as absolutely catastrophic. That is the highest kind of adjective or description we've heard the court use so blatantly in the eyes of the world. And I think that's the fundamental difference between all of these judgments, that today has been the court has drawn a line in the sand now. There is no, it is very blatantly even said, we're unconvinced that Israel is doing all it can to, for example, evacuate civilians out of Gaza or into rather safe zones within Gaza. And I think the intensity or the seriousness by which the court continues to treat this case is what is changing almost at a rapid speed. Partly in thanks to South Africa, and it's prompting the court to understand that the conditions are only worsening. Israel is by no means stopping its offensive in Gaza, and Rafah is the last straw to not only Palestinian civilian lives right now, but Palestine's existence entirely.
Yeah, well, we will wait and see, of course, with bated breath. Thank you so much for joining us this evening and sharing your insights with us. That is international relations expert Aaliyah Vayez, who is joining us on the line to talk about the ICJ ruling today.